Welcome into Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, ClayTravis. Rejoice, college football has returned in full earnest. I know we had a little bit of a preview in week 0, but tonight it officially begins. We're going to dive into those games. I'm going to give you some winners. But in the meantime, if you're a huge college football fan, I'd encourage you to go check out my Twitter feed at ClayTravis. I posted my favorite GIF of the shirtless NC State fan waving the t-shirt around his head when they upset Florida State. And then there were amazing responses. I said, share your favorite. Thousands of you responded. Lots of awesome moments if you're a college football fan to be able to enjoy and celebrate as we get closer and closer to kickoff. We will be on talking college football gambling on Lock It In at 4:30 Eastern, 3:30 Central, 2:30 Mountain, 1:30 Pacific time. I encourage all of you to check it out, and you will be happy that you did because we're going to have fun on that show as well as this one today. So, several different things that I want to hit, but right off the top here, I want to tell you my 3 gambling picks Thursday night college football kickoff. We went 2-0 in the opening week 0. We had the under in Florida, Miami, and we also had the over in Arizona and Hawaii. And I've got 3 picks for you tonight in all the Thursday night festivities. So here we go. Cincinnati, the line is around -2.5 against UCLA. I think Luke Fickell and crew gets it done. It's rare you get an opener of this magnitude for Cincinnati. I think their crowd will be hyped. UCLA is still a year away. I've got the Bruins going 6-6 this year. I think Cincinnati finds a way to get it done. I've got the Bearcats -2.5 tonight over UCLA. Also, I've got the under in what I think is the best game of the opening Thursday night in terms of sheer interest to me, and it's a little bit later. I love the under in Utah at BYU. Now, both of these teams, I think, are going to have really solid years. The battle for the state of Utah. Kyle Whittingham, for those of you who don't pay a lot of attention to this rivalry, it's fierce, it's competitive, it's fantastic. Kyle Whittingham went to BYU, is a Mormon, and has since been at Utah for a long time and has killed it there. One of the great underrated coaches in all of college football is Kyle Whittingham. And he has won 8 in a row in this series against his alma mater of BYU. And in fact, they've actually offered him the opportunity to come coach at BYU. If you know the state of Utah at all, Utah is the non-Mormon school and BYU is the Mormon school. So it's a bit of a holy war in that state. And I think the under is going to hit here. I think that the defenses are going to be strong, fierce, fantastic tonight. I think it'll be a little bit like Florida, Miami, not as poorly played probably as that one was, but I love the under here in Utah-BYU. Want you to hop on it. It's around 47, 48. Everybody has different lines at different providers. So, again, I give these picks out on Wednesday, but I want to make sure people are aware of the Thursday night games that are actually taking place, all right? So I encourage you to hop on this one. They have won, like I said, Utah has 8 in a row. I think Utah is going to win the Pac-12 South. I think Utah is going to win the Pac-12 South. I believe in them more than the Arizona schools, than the LA schools. I think Utah is going to advance and play in the Pac-12 South, winner in the Pac-12 championship game. So that is 2 of the plays. If you're just coming in, I'm on Cincinnati -2.5. I'm on the under in Utah and BYU, and I am on Clemson covering against Georgia Tech. Clemson has covered, I think it's 7 out of the last 9 games against Georgia Tech. You got the Paul Johnson offense, the triple option attack being replaced. I think Georgia Tech will struggle to score against Clemson at all. Always a little bit difficult when a line is that substantial, but to me, that is the play that is worth pursuing. So I am on. I think Clemson gets out big and is out early and remains out throughout this game. So I am on Clemson covering tonight against Georgia Tech. I'm on Cincinnati -2.5 tonight against UCLA, and I'm on the under in the Utah-BYU Holy War game. So those are my 3 picks. I'd encourage you to hop on them. We were 2-0 in week 0. We'll see exactly how this is going to go. I don't like the over. Somebody said if you have Clemson covering, take the over in that game. Overs in Clemson games have been a good bet lately. I don't think Georgia Tech has the offensive firepower to score very much. I could always be wrong in week 1. Who knows exactly what's going to happen? But I think Georgia Tech's going to struggle to score. So if you think Clemson's going to cover, sometimes you can say, hey, yeah, you know what? I'm going to put a lot of money on the over as well. And I've bet a lot of Clemson overs lately and done well. But I don't feel good about Georgia Tech being able to score very much at all. Now, you guys in the comments can share your favorite locks. Don't share them over and over again, but you can hop in, share your favorite Thursday night gambling pick in the comments, fire away, and other people can see those, and you can share your comments with my audience as well. All right, so hop in and share your favorites. Again, mine, Cincy on the under, Cincy -2.5, Utah-BYU on the under, and Clemson covers against Georgia Tech. Okay, let's dive in some more. All right, is there a fade guy? Fade the picks guy. First of all, I don't care if you want to fade the picks. Do whatever you want. I make a good living. It doesn't really matter to me. People are saying I need to block fade the picks guy. But what you're saying, if you're fade the picks guy, is I don't even make decisions myself, right? If you don't even make decisions yourself, what you're really saying is I am a lemming. I go in whatever direction the masses go. I do whatever somebody else makes a decision for, right? Make your own decisions and then roll. And choose to do what you like, but just know that if you fade the picks, you're a loser because you've been losing for 8 years. Just so you know. I've never done poor enough where just fading my college football picks would be able to win you money. I'd have to be so bad at winning that you would win over 52.4% of the time to cover your cost. And that's never been the case, I don't believe, in 8 years of giving out the picks. So you're welcome to do whatever you want. But just know that I have to be so bad that in order for you to win, it's just as hard from a statistical perspective to be bad as it is to be good. Like, if I could consistently lose 70% of the time, I'd be like, you know what? Fade me. Because it's just as hard to go 30-70 as it is to go 70-30. My goal is to hit 55%. Some years I do, some years I don't. Last year I was 52.3, I think, on the winning side. Year before that, I was 49% on the winning side. Year before that, I was 60. So we've had some good years, but got 8 years of data to look at. All right, this one is fascinating to me. Tony Romo is going to be a free agent at the end of this year. And he is demanding $10 million a year, which would be the highest in the history of sports media from a pure dollar perspective that anybody's ever been paid. Now, adjusted for inflation guy, and I think, again, adjusted for inflation guy does have his day in the sun every now and then. John Madden made $8 million back in 1994. But adjusted for inflation, so adjusted for the inflation, John Madden is the highest paid sports media person of all time. But for the current universe that we live in, based on pure dollars, Tony Romo, if he gets $10 million, would be the highest paid of all time. Now, I am rooting for everybody out there to make as much money as they possibly can, right? I want salaries to be as high as possible because I want to make as much money as I can. Your boy's on television for an hour every day. I got 3 hours of radio every day. I got Periscope. I got Facebook. I got a website that I run. I got about 8 different businesses that I'm involved in. I want as much money to be made as possible. I am a capitalist. I understand that some young people today are crazy and they are socialists. Your boy's a capitalist, all right? I want to make as much money as possible. Gruden made around $6 million a year. reports are that Troy Aikman makes about 7.5, and that Romo wants 10. Now, Stephen A. Smith may well get 10 for an awful lot of work, and I think he deserves it at ESPN. Colin Cowherd is close to 10, and he's got the best sports talk radio show in the country, so that is impressive in and of itself for him. And I think when Skip's deal comes up, he's probably got a good chance to get a good bump too, and reports are that he makes somewhere around $6 million a year now. But if I am CBS, there's no way I'm letting Romo hit the open market. Reports are, according to Front Office Sports, I tweeted out the link, is that the negotiations have broken off. And what is interesting about this is if Romo leaves CBS, then I got to think that ESPN would be all over the chance to go sign Tony Romo and fix Monday Night Football in one fell swoop, right? Because right now, they had the three-man with Jason Witten and Joe Tessitore and Booger, and now it's going to be Booger and Joe Tessitore. But whatever they did, if they got Romo in the booth, that would solve all of their issues going forward. So CBS would then have to replace Romo, and I think it's a smart move for Romo to say, okay, guys, I will go ahead and knock out another year, then I'll hit the free agency market. Every month I'm going to become more valuable if you're Tony Romo. I know ESPN is waiting out there in the wings. I think $10 million a year for Romo to solve all of ESPN's problems with Monday Night Football is money well spent when you consider that right now ESPN spends around $1.9 billion, that's billion with a B, on the broadcast deal they have with the NFL right now, okay? So that's a small fraction of it. If you're spending almost $2 billion a year, $10 million for Romo is a rounding error for ESPN. They could also bring him in to do other content surrounding Monday Night Football. Let me say this too. If I'm Romo, I also am comfortable waiting because if Google, if Facebook, if probably Twitter doesn't have the money or the market cap, Amazon, if Google, Amazon, or Facebook decide to get involved as tech companies trying to buy NFL rights, they could find themselves in the same position that Fox found itself in 1994, where the guy that you hire is an immediate legitimizer of your coverage. In other words, Fox was faced with a great deal of trepidation when they bought the NFL rights back in 1994, and when they made the decision to go hire John Madden, it paved a lot of difficulties over for them because people said, well, they're serious about this if they're going to go get John Madden. And similarly, if Google, if Facebook, or if Amazon got into play here and they were getting one of the NFL packages, having Tony Romo to call the game would go a long way towards notifying the public, hey, we're serious about this. We're not trying to do it on the cheap. And so Romo could not only have ESPN bidding, but he could have Facebook, he could have Google, and he could have Amazon all trying to come in and get him away from CBS. So if I were advising him right now, I would say don't sign. If your number's 10 million and CBS is only going up to 8, or they're going up to 7, or whatever they're going up to, wait, you're going to get your $10 million. So I think that could make a lot of sense. I'm rooting for Romo to get as much money as possible because, again, I'm a capitalist, and I believe that a rising tide lifts all boats. Somebody said, why wouldn't Fox want him? First of all, I don't think Fox or NBC has an opening in their number one broadcast crew. And I don't know everybody's contract, but right now Fox has Joe Buck alongside Troy Aikman, and they also, NBC has Chris Collinsworth alongside of Al Michaels. I don't know when those guys' deals come up. If they're coming up around the same time, then there could be some musical chairs here, and there could be cross-bidding. But I haven't seen any suggestion that that Aikman's deal is up or that Chris Collinsworth's deal is up. Therefore, I don't think Romo would leave unless he were going to be on the number one announced team of whoever was hiring him away. In other words, he would only leave to get the better game, and right now he's paired with Jim Nantz. So I think that would be the reason why NBC and Fox might not be as interested in Romo. If there were openings at those networks and Aikman or Collinsworth were not going to stay, then I think certainly there would be multiple other companies that would be at the table. But I don't think being able to offer the number 2 job or something at Fox would be appealing to Romo, and I don't think they'd be able to justify the $10 million for him to not have the signature games. And NBC only has one game a week, so they would have to make a decision about Chris Collinsworth instead of Romo. Somebody said, how about Andrew Luck being a commentator? I don't think, well, first of all, we don't know if Andrew Luck, what he wants to do. If he's trying to get away and be free from the game of football, it doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense for him to be a commentator. Secondly, this matters. I don't think Andrew Luck has a very good voice. And what you sound like matters a great deal when you are announcing a game, because generally speaking, you're not being physically present in terms of what you look like, but your voice matters tremendously. And so I think that Andrew Luck, if you hear him talk, he just doesn't have the kind of voice that is very enjoyable to hear. And so I think it's unlikely that he would make a lot of sense as an announcer. Could be wrong. He could be so great at it that his voice becomes less of a significant issue. But when your voice is all that you have during a broadcast, it matters a great deal. And so your voice doesn't have to be traditional Queen's English or anything, or King's English or anything like that. It can be unique. It can be captivating. Dick Vitale doesn't have like a traditional broadcast voice, and neither did John Madden, but it works really, really well, and so did John Gruden. I just think that Andrew Luck's voice is a challenge. I think other guys have had this issue, like Bill Simmons, I think has this issue in general with his voice and the way it projects. It just doesn't sound that great. And you can't control what your voice sounds like unless you're a voice actor, but you can't control by and large what you look like either. And television a lot of times is very cosmetic. And when you're a voice speaker, what your voice sounds like is a ton of the issue. And I actually think that's why people have had issues with, for instance, Beth Mowins in the past. It's that her voice is just frustrating, right? It's not that she's a woman. It's just that her voice just is a frustrating tone, much like, for me, like Sean McDonough. I don't particularly enjoy Sean McDonough's voice, even though I know he's a very skilled broadcaster, because it's very nasal to me, and I don't enjoy it. It's great to have, and it's not saying you can't have an accent, right? Like Keith Jackson had an accent, and he was phenomenal in broadcast. And so sometimes the accent, Vern Lundquist has an accent, and he was phenomenal in broadcast. But it's a unique sort of voice that people respond to in a good way. And so I think that factors in a big way. All right. ACC Network launched last week. I think it's fair at this point in time, unless something happens in the next 2.5 hours or whenever the kickoff is set to happen, unless the ACC gets picked up by Comcast, Dish, AT&T Uverse, and Cox Communications, it is a big swing and a miss for the ACC network at launch. There's no other way to classify it than it is a failure at launch. Doesn't mean that Comcast might not come along down the line and pick it up. Doesn't mean that Dish might not. Doesn't mean that AT&T Uverse might not. Doesn't mean that Cox Communications might not come along and pick it up. But right now, the ACC network is impossible to call anything other than a failure at launch. Now, there are several reasons why it has failed, okay? And you probably aren't going to hear a lot of other people tell you the truth and tell you that it's a failure, because they're in the business of keeping their relationships with ESPN strong and spinning everything in a positive direction. I try to tell you the truth. This is a big fat failure. I know quite a bit about the SEC network launch. When the SEC network launched, the SEC executives were terrified that they would have a major battle over carriage and that people wouldn't be able to watch their favorite games. And as a result, they went to war, and the SEC fans lined up on the ramparts, and everybody in the cable industry was afraid to stand up to the SEC. And so at launch, the SEC was in 9 of the 10 largest, and I think the only one they weren't included in, if I'm not mistaken, somebody can look this up. I believe the SEC network was only not in Altice, or whatever it's called, in New York City. I think they were in like a premium tier there. And so as a result, it was a challenge to get everybody picked up, but it was the most successful cable network launch in the history of sports cable, and one of the most successful in the history of cable television, period. There are going to be a lot of people right now that do not have the ability to watch Clemson, going up against Georgia Tech tonight, and the games get worse from here. Once Comcast, Dish, AT&T, UVerse, and Cox allow the first game to air, they're probably not going to add this channel until next year, year after, maybe never. Now, part of the challenge is that the ACC waited too long to launch their network. The SEC got in the sweet spot 5 years ago, right before the cable and the satellite bundle started to collapse. The Big Ten network was in long before. The Pac-12 network has always been a mess, and the ACC network has more in common now with the Pac-12 network by far than it does the SEC network or the Big Ten network. I said this and wrote it last week. I wrote it last week and said, if the ACC had been smart, instead of trying to try to repeat what the Big Ten and the SEC did, they would have gone straight digital and not worried about trying to launch into an awful market for cable and satellite businesses. They would have gone straight to ESPN Plus. And if they had gone straight to ESPN Plus, they probably could have gotten more guaranteed money, and it would have been a better asset for ESPN to be able to get people to sign up for ESPN Plus, because the ACC network would be a driver for them. Except instead, they've demanded their ACC network, and I've got Comcast. I'm not going to have this game. Now, I can go stream it. I know a lot of you will just get on Reddit streams and go watch it for free. I know that there are a lot of different places that stream games for free online, and a lot of you are just going to track it down that way, and you're not going to be bothered by it. But the league is trying to make money, and if you only way you can make money is by getting your game legally distributed, and I don't see a reason why Comcast, Dish, AT&T, UVerse, or Cox are going to make decisions here. And so I think this is going to be a mess for the ACC. I don't see it resolving itself. Football drives way more interest than basketball does. I understand that some people are bigger ACC basketball fans than they are ACC football fans, but football is what drives the creation of the network. 80% of viewing typically is for football in every conference, if not higher. And so I think it's going to be a mess. I think this is a failure. The ACC network at launch has failed. Now, they have the chance over the next several years to try to remedy that failure, but there's no other way to classify it than as a failure, unless by kickoff tonight, suddenly Comcast, Dish, AT&T, UVerse, and Cox come on, and that is going to happen. So I appreciate all of you. Thank you for hanging out with me. Is that true about Boogie Cousins? If it's true, I'll add a discussion here. Is the Cousins news that somebody just popped in the? I'm going to go on Twitter and check it live right now. I wish people could post links sometimes so that there's actual stories that are out there. But it's hard to. Oh wow, yeah. 3 minutes ago, from Bleacher Report, an arrest warrant has been issued for DeMarcus Cousins on a domestic violence charge. This was just tweeted out 3 minutes ago by Bleacher Report. Let me make sure it's the actual Bleacher Report. Yes, it is the actual Bleacher Report. So I said DeMarcus Cousins would be arrested within 5 years. Turns out I should have said within 10 years. Because if I'd said within 10 years, I would have been correct. So everybody out there who was angry at me for saying DeMarcus Cousins would be arrested within 5 years, do they all apologize to me? Now, I should have gone for double or nothing. Should have taken the over. Wow, this is the news again. An arrest warrant has been issued for DeMarcus Cousins as on a domestic violence charge. So, Boogie, I said should have taken the over on 5 years instead of the 5 years or under. But I imagine, is everybody else going to apologize to me now? That's the question. All right, I love all of you. My name is ClayTravis. This has been Outkick the Coverage. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. We'll be watching games tonight. I'll be live tomorrow, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern. We'll be live on Lock It In, 4:30 Eastern, 3:30 Central, 2:30 Mountain, 1:30 Pacific. Love all you guys. See you. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. Love you. Thank you, Facebook.